So this is my discussion on bouncing back, and it's the journey to dream again or learning to dream again. And this is really for anyone struggling or anxious maybe about the future. And my hope is I can get people to dream again after after this discussion. Luther likes parties. Me too. So you guys may know this, but every year hundreds of thousands of people experience anxiety or trauma in some shape or form. And maybe it's for some, it's a divorce, maybe it's a serious injury, maybe it's a bad health diagnosis or losing a loved one. And the resulting anxiety and trauma and stress can often sabotage our future unless you are equipped with the three secrets I discovered, and I'll share those with you here in just a minute. But hopefully, after I share my story, you'll be encouraged to know that if I can go through what I went through with the lawsuits and the death threats, you can learn to dream again. And I'm going to share 3 tips on how I learned to bounce back, some practical tips after going through 18 months of severe and unrelenting stress that was pretty much affecting all areas of my life, my business at the time, my finances, my personal life, and even my marriage. And I'll share how I overcame those and that tidal wave of anxiety and depression, and how I eventually I did learn to dream again. And I'll show you how to ask yourself some tough questions in those moments and learn to focus on the right things. And hopefully you can begin your turnaround journey to dream again. So some of you guys may or may not know my story, but years before the global pandemic of 2020, I found myself in the middle of my own personal sort of pandemic. I was CEO of a software company. We had millions of dollars in revenues. We had a team in Nashville, a team in London, a team in India. We were making a lot of money, and billions of dollars worth of client revenues poured through our software every single year. And we were in the newspaper and the news all the time. We were winning awards. Man, life was great until until something happened that changed everything in 2 seconds. And I had discovered that we had been hacked. And a hacker from Vietnam had broken into our software system and stolen 250,000 credit card numbers. Not $250,000, 250,000 credit card numbers, worth an estimated $1.5 billion with a B. And this singular event was a tidal wave that swallowed me. I began to sink into this darkness that triggered this severe stress, anxiety, depression, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And day after day, week after week, it just kept getting worse. And it was a living nightmare that haunted me when I was awake, it haunted me when I was asleep. And at the time, the situation felt hopeless. In 2021, the NIMH, which is the National Institute of Mental Health, stated that 61% of adults in the US received some sort of treatment in 2020. You guys probably remember COVID. That's pretty high statistic, 61%. And I just started to be afraid of the future. I don't know if you guys have ever felt that way. Afraid of what tomorrow would bring, mainly because every week it just kept getting worse and worse. And you guys know things are bad when your company that you own has to hire a crisis PR team, crisis management team. To things are not good, like not good at all. And I don't know if you've ever been, quote, stressed out of your mind, but some of you may know what I'm talking about. But I know most people have suffered from some sort of gripping stress, anxiety, or trauma, and some more than others. And maybe it was a divorce, bankruptcy, physical abuse, injury, bad health diagnosis, PTSD, or maybe you recently lost a loved one. For me, just when you think it couldn't get worse, it gets worse. We get a knock on our door, a uniformed police officer serving me one of what would become later many, many lawsuits. And this was just the beginning. And some of you here have probably navigated some lawsuits in your life. That first one just punches you in the gut. Like your mind is racing, the unknown is scary. And by the 12th one, you got keyboard shortcuts. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, a third of my staff quit because of the stress and uncertainty they felt. And customers were angry, right? And rightfully so. And a local customer in Nashville told us he wanted to murder my staff. And why? Well, this wasn't just our credit card numbers that were stolen. This was our client's customer credit cards that were stolen. And this didn't affect just my customers, it affected my clients' customers and their businesses as well. And in that moment, my crisis PR team shared a nugget I want to share with you guys today. And they asked, what if this wasn't credit card numbers? What if this was social security numbers and birthdays that were stolen? And as you may know, identity theft haunts people for the rest of their life. And that's not something you just go get a new credit card in 5 to 7 business days, right? And as bad as it was, it could have been a whole lot worse. So that what if question planted a seed in my mind. And this is a question I want you guys to ask yourself today about your stress, about your trauma, about your anxiety. And that is, what if? And what if the situation you're in today is just temporary? The biggest challenge that I had with the situation wasn't the actual situation, believe it or not. It was the meaning that I extracted from that situation. It was also the things I said to myself, like loser, failure, right? If I wanted proof I was a giant screw up, then this situation was pretty solid evidence. And I cannot put into words just how stressful it was. And I felt like I was losing hope. I was losing my mind. And for the next 18 months, I felt like a shell of a person. I was there, but not really there. You know what I mean? Those what if questions kept circling in my mind. What if I didn't see myself as a failure? What if I didn't see myself as a loser? What if I stopped referring to this situation as a disaster? What if I reimagined my reality? What if I viewed the situation slightly differently? What if I started and referred to it as an incident? Not good, not bad, just an incident. What if I could hire more staff and take another stab at this? And what if this wasn't the end of me? What if the situation was just temporary? Now, you all know, of course, mistakes happen, accidents happen, stress happens. Sometimes it just knocks on your door. You don't go looking for it, it finds you. But what we tell ourselves about the situation is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's not the negative situation. Again, it's the meaning that we extract from the situation. And I had to outrun the identity I had felt in that moment as a failed entrepreneur. And I was looking for a glimmer of hope, a way out of it. And I felt like I was adrift in a sea of anxiety and depression with no paddle, like no way back to shore. And at the time, my business partner, he was so stressed out, he left. I hired a replacement person that didn't work out. I've hired new staff. They were a disaster. Like, not only did a third of my staff leave, but they went to other jobs. And guess what they did? They were incentivized with bonuses to recruit their friends. So what do you think they did? They reached back into my company and brought another third of my staff. So now 2/3 of my staff had left. And at the very moment when I need to have stability and try to rebuild, things kept crumbling. And revenue was falling off a cliff. Legal bills were piling up. Clients were leaving by the dozens. And as I sat in my office every day after everyone left, the lights off, the only word that I could use to describe how I felt was I felt alone. And most people live in fear because we project the past into the future, right? We focus on the wrong things. And so the second thing I learned was to master the art of focus. And 2 weeks before Christmas, my 8 and 10-year-old daughters, they would say, I don't like daddy. He's always angry. And my wife told me I wasn't any fun to be around and I needed to consider separating. And I don't know if you've ever been affected by stress, anxiety, trauma, depression, whatever. That's reached into all areas of your life, but I was in the midst of mine. And if you're not careful, it's super easy to slip into a negative spiral and grow very bitter, very cold, and just numb to life overall. And I had to do something to squelch the pain I had, because I had no reason to even crawl out of bed in the mornings. It was like, Matt, welcome to another sucky day of your life. You know what I mean? And something had to give. So I asked myself a what if question. What if I reimagined my reality, the mess that I was in? Now, I've been to Las Vegas many, many times for speaking engagements. I was actually there last week or earlier this week. And last year, I was able to take a helicopter ride over Las Vegas, over the strip at night with a few friends. And it was something I always remember. And now from the sidewalk level, you look up. Wow, those hotels are massive. But those massive hotels can also be symbolic of how we see our problems, right? They can look huge. However, from the sky, from the helicopter's viewpoint, those hotels look small, almost like little Lego blocks when you look out on the horizon. But guess what? From ground zero, from the sidewalk, they appear huge. And you have to have the proper perspective, right? Or an elevator perspective. And it makes it easy to see your problems more correctly, right? And you can literally reimagine and re-envision your reality, and you can see your situation with a bit more clarity and a bit more perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like, things aren't always as bad as they seem. The problems are tiny, but only when you get an elevative perspective. As bad as it may seem, it's not the end of the world. And for most of us, it's a temporary moment in time. Maybe it's a few days, maybe it's a month, maybe it's for a season. But the second thing that I learned was I had to shift my focus from the past to the future. So I had to stop looking in the rearview mirror of the situation. And I was ready to put things behind me where it belonged. And I shifted. I started paying attention to the future. And it was more of that large windshield in front of me. And I was missing amazing opportunities because I was so focused on the past and not on the future. Right? I was hyper focused on that situation. And if you've been dealing with stress, depression, anxiety for 12 months or more, you know it's very easy to let those dark and heavy thoughts overwhelm you. It's easy to end up feeling hopeless, but it's easy to let those entertain some negative and spiraling thoughts. So you have to guide those wild, crazy thoughts. You have to push them, guide them to a productive outcome. And I was focused on the wrong thing. I was focused on the pain. I was focused on the past. And one thing that stuck with me after all this that I went through, was where you're going is more important than where you are. See, that's what the windshield represents, is the future and where you're going. And that divorce, the bankruptcy, the bad news from your doctor, the trauma you may still be in today, that heaviness wherever you are right now, remember where you're going is always more important than where you are. And how do you shift from this old situation, this old trauma, this old stuff into your new future? Well, it's a great question. And being the practical guy that I am, I had to think through this old me versus the new me, this new way of thinking, this new way of doing. And having a software background, it became obvious that I had to shift from version 2.0 to version 3.0, right? We'll call it Matt 2.0 to Matt 3.0. You can do the same as well. It means a major upgrade of your hardware and your software. And the hardware is, of course, your physical body. The software is, of course, your mindset, your operating system. And I had to learn to be healthy again. I had to let go of the stress, anxiety of what happened and prepare for a brighter future. Now, the software is literally how you function, how I function, how you function, how you filter information, how you interpret situations, how you make decisions. So right now, I encourage all of you to think about where you are in your journey to dream again and consider if it's time for a major software or hardware upgrade in your life. It doesn't have to start with anything significant or expensive, just a few degree shift that's consistently walked out over time. So as a quick visual, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a pilot for NetJets, and I asked him, what is the heading from JFK to New York? What is the difference between LA, LAX, and DFW? You guys know I'm talking about DFW, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, of course, and LAX being Los Angeles. And it's actually 1,467 miles apart, but it's only 20-degree difference in a plane, right? So the difference between JFK, leaving JFK, LAX, and DFW is only 20-degree difference. It's a slight difference, but it's with consistency over time, it's literally 1,467-mile difference. And one of my favorite ways to kind of upgrade and think through this is what I call the 90-minute power walk. You guys may have seen us talking about this in our community, but if you were to get away from the technology, the distractions, get some fresh air, get a little bit of exercise, kind of reset your mind, think about what you want to see in your future, and what happened if you stopped living day to day. What would happen if you started being more intentional? What if you got clear on what you wanted? Not just, I dream of a this or that. What if you got clear on very, very specific things, like what you wanted from your relationships, from your finances, your career, your personal life? What if you spent time on a power walk thinking, maybe it's 4 different power walks, thinking about what you wanted from each of these situations? So for me, I believe this tool is available to anyone, regardless of your financial situation, regardless of your fitness level. This is quite literally accessible to anyone. And what if you imagined your dreams and you got to work and you started making them happen? See, I learned what you focus on expands. And at the time, I was focused on the negative. I was focused on stopping the pain and that heaviness that I felt after all the death threats, the lawsuits, being hacked, all the things. My wife telling me it's time to consider separating after 18 months of pure agony and stress. This very, very common sense thought occurred to me. Maybe if instead of focusing on this huge pile of crap of the situation I was in, maybe I should start looking for a shovel. And ultimately, I decided to rebuild my company, try again.
Yeah.
And sorry, Devin, I had to meet you. Ultimately, I decided to rebuild my company and try again. And after it's all said and done, it was more profitable than ever. And a few years later, investors offered me money, and I'm no dummy. I accepted their offer and sold the company. And the third thing I learned was you got to smile every day. And how do you do that when you're in the midst of your stress or your trauma? How do you smile? Like when you have nothing, it feels like nothing to be thankful for. I had to find a reason to get out of bed, right? For me, I'm super practical. So what do? I bought a puppy. Come on, guys, pay attention. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy a puppy. And it's basically the same thing. Puppy can make me smile every day for no reason because I need to smile and I need to laugh. Now, I needed something positive in my life at the time, even if it's just for a few minutes before I walked out the door. And of course, I'm not suggesting that you buy a puppy. Let's not get crazy, but some of you guys may already have one. What I recommend is you go to your local pet store and you tell them Matt said you need an emergency puppy cuddle session. Write that down, guys. Emergency puppy cuddle session. You don't want to order the wrong thing. You don't want to come home with 2 bulldogs. So for those of you who are over 40, you may struggle with a different kind of what if question, right? What if your best days are behind you? And I would challenge you to think, what if your best days are still ahead of you? What if you dare to chase your dreams? What if you took the risk? Sure, you may fail, but what if you fly? What if you inspired and changed millions of people's lives? What if the world is a better place because of you? Now, Nelson Mandela says there's no passion to be found in playing small and settling for a life that is less than one that you're capable of. Well, where are you now, Matt? Give us some updates. Well, I ended up rededicating my vows on the beach with my wife. Here's some pictures. And I was able to get off all the pills that I was prescribed for depression, anxiety, sleeping pills, high cholesterol pills. And I ended up upgrading my hardware, and I completed my first 5K run years ago, and then a half marathon, then a full marathon, then an Olympic triathlon, then a half Ironman, then a full distance Ironman. And I know, Jack, you're on here too. People ask me like why I trained for an Ironman. Well, in the midst of my crisis, my doctor told me I needed to do a little more cardio, and it took me 14 hours to complete my first Ironman. And does that count as more cardio? In 2021, as you guys know, we did launch a nonprofit. We raise money for charities and causes that are important to us. The question is, am I special? Am I really all that different than any of you? Hopefully, you don't have to start your life, your dreams with this huge hole in the ground where your company used to stand, kind of like I did. And I had the courage to chase my dreams. Do you have the courage to chase yours? Again, for those of you who are over 40 like I am, we can all dust off those dreams. They're sometimes buried below many feet of bedrock. And we call that doubt and disbelief. And we can get back to dreaming again. Most people spend more time planning a summer vacation than they do their dreams. But what if we carved out some time every month and got busy working on our dreams? What if we went deep on getting clear on what we want our future to look like? And what if we can all start the journey to dream again? And I believe that can happen when we ask what if questions, master the art of focus, and smile every day. Thank you. Questions?